let's continue exploring our Cmotion guy, and I really don't want to throw everything towards you at once because I really think that would be counterproductive. So let's go step by step with slightly more complex examples as we proceed. So for this lesson I will create a simple character. So let's go with the biped. We are familiar with it because it is a human preset, relatively speaking. So let's create a pelvis. Let's create a spine. Let's say regular FK spine, and I will hold the control key and create both legs at the same time. Now let's leave this character to be without any mesh because it would be much easier to explain things in this form. Now let's hit this animate tab and hit this magical add walk button. So what will happen now? We will receive our Cmotion automatically, and inside that Cmotion we will get a few things already done for us. So these parameters are set automatically by the template we add walk from. So this is contained inside the template. Let's see what that add walk button did for us. So we will hit play, and there you go. We have a character walking. Simple as that. It's really that simple. Now you maybe want to change the stride length, for example 50, so we have a little bit more space here, maybe even 75, so it appears a little bit more natural. Of course, if the walking is too slow or too fast, you can change this parameter, so maybe 20, and as a result the character will walk faster. On the other hand, if we put this to maybe, let's say 40, it will walk slower. So now some concepts here inside will be much clearer. So let me just stop this, go back, and I want to show you that if you hit the J key on your keyboard and hold it down, you can actually scrub the time once you're in the viewport. So that is really handy. This function is called time warp, and I use it quite a lot when working with animation. So you can concentrate on a certain area and fine-tune as necessary. So I'm pretty sure you will find it useful. Now let me show you some principles on this real life example here in this action window. And before that, let me just deselect and lock this attribute manager here, so it's not distracting us from this window here where we will actually work with all these parameters. What we have here is quite simple. We have both legs with lift action applied and the pelvis, which is a local hub, and it has those legs as a parent, just as you would expect in a regular body, so to speak. So for example, under legs we have different phase settings, which creates these opposite positions of the legs. So if I set 0 on both guys, they will be in sync. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Let me just undo that for a moment, and let's take a look at these lift actions. Now, since this is a really simple walk, we basically have slight upward motion by this value on both legs. So let's put 10 here, so we can just emphasize that a little bit, and let's hit play to see the effect. So now the legs are moving upwards, they're rising by this value. We can really go high, maybe 20, and create really a big difference in the motion. So I think you are pretty much following this by now. So the concept is really simple. There are no keyframes, there is no manual setting except creating a spline through which all motion will derive. Let's put this back to, it was somewhere around 3. It doesn't have to be perfect, so it's all a matter of taste and finding the right values which really work for you. Let's go back. What is really important, and you shouldn't forget, is the fact that this child object, these targets, will inherit and obey the movement of their respective hub. In this case, this pelvis, guys. So let's demonstrate that. Let's, for example, here to this lift action applied to this pelvis, let's maybe change this to, let's go into negative direction. So we will go down, so minus 10, and our character will be sort of jumping around and acting a little bit funny. So that is the really important concept for you to understand. So maybe if I want my character to jump, I'll have to synchronize both feet so they're in the same phase. So let's put 0. So we have our character happily jumping, which is a little bit of odd jumping, but it will give us an opportunity to explain how we can fix that inside this spline graph editor. And actually we now reached the most difficult part of the training, because I really cannot teach you what I'm about to say, and that concerns the feeling for the motion. So you have to be able to deconstruct human motion, in this case, into components. So while a human is walking in one cycle, so in one cycle of stepping, this kind of motion doesn't happen. I really hope you're following. So as you can see, it goes really up and down 2 times, where it should instead go once. Let me clarify this by resetting this spline. So I'm right clicking and I will reset this spline, this lift action, and let's just lower it for now. So now we have no up and down motion, and we basically lost the feeling of this character moving. So this is what I cannot teach you. I cannot help you in that department. You have to use your artistic sense. Now, what I do know, and what you can observe in human motion, is that it all comes down to the laws of physics, and therefore the nature of the motion. So here, logically speaking, you would expect, let's say, from in this position, for this part of the body to lift off. So let me just show you what I mean. So in the center of the movement, our pelvis should be going upwards. I really hope that makes sense. So let me add a point here, and we will actually have to do an inverse thingy here, because we have minus 10. So currently in this position, so the legs are going up, and let's say roughly here, our pelvis should go upwards. It should reach maximum value here. So let's add a point here and simply drag this down somewhere around here. So let me now show you what I mean. So if I scrub this slowly, the character jumps off, it extends the legs and slowly comes down. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So if I press play, I will have basic jumping motion. Okay, it's really sort of funny now because of this interpolation, but we can change that. And understanding the motion of anything in the real world, and also being able to deconstruct that motion, is absolutely essential for you to succeed in producing believable animation. So let's actually select all these points here by hitting Ctrl A, and let's right click here so you can see the parameter I'm choosing from this drop down menu. So let's choose point types. Let's go with easy. So we have nice and fluid motion. Let's try this by hitting play. So we have some sort of more realism to it. I really hope you understand, and that you are successfully following. So by this easing, we have appearance of weight into our character. So let's go maybe with 15. So you're basically searching for the right numbers. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let me stop this, go back. I really want to mention that this spline editor, this function graph, is fantastic tool. It's really powerful. So for example, these dashed lines here, let me just show you. Those are minimum and maximum lines, so you can pretty much limit on either side regardless of the number of points. So this will be the maximum value for this minimum line. I really hope that didn't confuse anyone. So basically those are limitators. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And of course there is a multitude of commands here under this right click menu. Now, even though this looks really interesting, it gains a completely new dimension if you change this walk from static to one of these line or path guys. Let's choose a line for starters, and this is what will happen, and our character will happily jump, and it will jump by this amount set here. So if you set this to higher value, it will simply jump a longer distance, so it will cover more distance with a single jump. You can really go overboard with this, so we have a really powerful athlete jump, and let's actually be conservative and put, let's say, 100 here. This time, as already told, it will influence the speed of complete action happening. Okay, so the direction, we can choose the direction of this guy. Now, here is a simple, interesting feature which is called gradient, and it can be a little bit misunderstood. So let me actually tune this down to 75, and now this doesn't mean it will go in a linear fashion downward or upward. It will actually appear as though it is climbing on the stairs. So I think this will make more sense if I change some values here. So let's just briefly go from the beginning. So here under legs, I'll create a default phase variation, so minus 25. I'll go 25 here. So let's take a look now. So actually it is jumping high because of this value. We can go minus 1 or 0. So it's sort of going upwards via steps. I hope that makes sense. So that's what this gradient guy is for. Okay, let's zero it out. I'm pretty sure you can feel how much power lies in this system. So now you could actually create maybe a path for this guy to move. So let's go to a top view like this, and I will shift this direction back to 0 so we have a nice and clean value. So let's draw a simple cubic spline, so maybe something like this. So I'm creating a path on which this character will walk on. Okay, so let's go back to perspective view, and maybe I will delete this point. We don't want this path to be too long because I want this character to stay in the visible area of the viewport. So let's choose path here, and the settings will change a little bit. We will lose some options naturally because now we will follow a path. So drop that path inside, and immediately character will orient itself on the beginning of the path. Okay, so if you, for example, want the character to start on this end, you have to invert the point order on this spline. So you can do that by right-clicking and hitting this reverse sequence. But actually I want it now to walk from here to this end. So now when our guy is on the spline, so let's check this out, and it's actually walking and following that spline. We'll give it some more time, maybe 150, like this, so it will walk longer. And notice here that it really doesn't walk as you would expect. So that's where this pose tab comes in. Okay, so it's not really following that path correctly. You see the legs are oriented differently. Now you may think that this follow option has the great impact on it, and it actually has, but the biggest issue here is, let me just stop this, go back, and I will have to unlock this to access spline parameters. And this is just one minor thing you should be aware of, and that is if intermediate points are set to adaptive, this kind of behavior can happen. So let's actually press J here and walk here. So here is the issue. Now, if you change this to uniform, the character will orient itself properly. Now, I'm not sure if this is a bug or not, but the solution is to keep your splines in uniform or natural mode. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So now let's hit play. You can see that guy is really following this spline correctly. Let's in fact give it more time, maybe 200. Stretch this so it's really walking on that path, which is really cool and shows you the possibilities of this fantastic Cmotion system. Now let's have some fun with these options under pause tab. So if I hit play and uncheck this guy, it will actually not orient itself according to the path. So here you can choose the option to follow and how the hubs will be aligned towards the path spline. This bank option, and I will explain this a little bit later. So here under axis option we have quite a few interesting things. So let me first try to explain and visualize what this axis system means here under this pause tab. Here you can define which axis is forward for your character. So for example, currently our hub, so this guy is oriented in -z. Okay, let's try to visualize that. Currently, our character will be oriented this way, and the vertical orientation will be y+, so this way. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let's change this. Let's change maybe this to z+. Okay, so now as a result, our character will simply walk backwards. So this is really neat and offers a lot of possibilities. So now it's maybe a good idea for us to show what this vertical means. So if I change this maybe to X, then our character will simply be oriented differently. If I enable banking, you see it has different impact on this. So this is kind of hard to explain. So let's put this to Y, and maybe I will even select a spline point here, because you can actually do that. You can change the path. So let's turn off bank. Currently our character is walking backwards, which we can change. So let's make it walk in a regular fashion like this. As it reaches this point, it doesn't really bank, but as soon as you enable this, it will bank according to the spline values. I hope that makes sense, and it's a little bit abstract, but I think you can understand at least the basics of this system. And this is just the beginning, so maybe I will simply zero this out, but I have to delete this doodle guy. So in the world mode, and let's put this to 0, so it's once again back on the ground. Now, what if we want our character to perform a sidewalk? So then you will have to choose the appropriate axis. So in this case, that would be the X, and it will immediately orient itself. Let's go actually to minus, and watch what happens. It really does walk from side to side, but we have overlapping feeds. Now, here under Object tab, under these actions, for every single hub, we can change some values. So let me show you this by going, for example, here in this stage. So we are looking for overlap. So here we have overlapping motion, and we can use these hub options for every single leg to change the position a little bit. So I will just offset slightly. For example, here in this key moment, I want to offset this a left leg. So let's actually offset it by maybe something like this. And let's see if that works. And maybe we will lower this to -10, and we will also offset on the right leg, so 10 here, and we will see if our leg motion will overlap. We will go maybe a little bit more, so let's maybe try 13 or so on each side, like this. So it's basically searching for right value. Now you can offset things vertically also. You can offset things horizontally, so something like this. So a lot of freedom there. So how about that? This is really, really cool. It's important to understand that every single of these tabs contains a multitude of parameters which you can set. So for example, here under this pose tab, you can offset the base of your object. So for example, if I do something like this, I will actually put my object into crouching position. So let's make it walk in the regular manner. So forward like this, and you can even go like this. So it's actually walking oddly at this moment, but I'm just trying to show you what each parameter does on most simplest example I can think of. Okay, so let's stop this, go back, and here under object, you will get rid of this position offsets because we don't need them anymore. Let's hit play, and we have our character happily walking. Let's stop this, go back. Now, just before we finish this lesson, I want to show you just one more thing, because I'm pretty sure you can appreciate the fact that this is really complex, and I really wanted to divide all this into few lessons rather than having one giant lesson which will probably confuse you and would certainly be very cumbersome to watch. So here under these target options, because these legs are currently the targets, you can choose the placement of these guys. So let me just zoom in a bit so I can show you what I mean. Currently, they are positioned just as in our initial pose, which we gained after we hit that fancy add walk button, and here you can actually change that. This option, this placement option, really determines how the target will be placed. So they can be placed in posed or maybe in line. So you see they are now in line, both of these guys, they're sharing the same common direction. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Or here you have a spaced option, which is basically the same as line, but you can choose the spacing between those targets. This is the simplest explanation I could come up with, and I hope makes sense. And this is really an odd looking box, so let's actually get this back to pose. Now we will take a little break, and I'm sure you will appreciate it, and we will continue exploring this Cmotion in our next lesson.